Okay, this tutorial covers editing images and state flags for the NSDM maptools campaign. The program I use for this is an image editor called paint.net. It's free and open source. You can download it from getpaint.net. And I like it because it feels a lot like Microsoft Paint, but it has some important features that Paint is missing. For example, if I delete this white background, it turns transparent, which is shown by this white and gray checkerboard pattern. I can also add layers down here. So if I add a new layer and then draw, say, a red circle, that doesn't remove anything from the layer below it. They're treated as two separate images stacked on top of each other. So if I move this layer up, I now have white covering the red circle, but it still shows through in the transparent part. If you also go to More, you can control the transparency level. So default is 255 for completely opaque. I'm going to set it to about 80. And then when I paint it like that, I get sort of a pink haze that is partially transparent but not completely. Close that. And let's start with, say, creating a new type of base token. So in your maptools folder, there's a folder called maptools unit symbols, and this contains all the basic images that I use for the tokens. So let's go to land, go to, let's say, what do we got here? Let's go with artillery. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag all of those artillery units and open each image so they'll be displayed in paint.net. And that will give me all 8 of the basic formation sizes. Then I'll go ahead and create a new folder here called, say, maintenance. And I've decided that I want to create a maintenance symbol. So the first thing is to delete this artillery symbol and fill that back in with white paint. And then I need to sample what I want maintenance to look like. So if I go to the Wikipedia article on NATO military symbols, I've got a simple maintenance graphic here that'll do. So I'll copy that. I'll paste it into a new layer. And I'll clean this up. Wikipedia and NATO should both be either unlicensed or Creative Commons licensed, so there shouldn't be any issue using this graphic. But because it's not exactly what I want, I'm going to do a third layer, and I'm just going to use it as a reference graphic when I draw my own. So I'll just draw that. And I'll draw a circle. And I'll draw another circle. And then I'll delete half the circle on either edge. And there, that looks more or less like a wrench used for maintenance. So we'll turn off the sample that I was using to compare, and I'll delete that layer. And then I'll merge this layer down. Oops. And now I have a new wrench symbol. I'll just copy the bottom half of that image, and then I can just paste it and paste it on top of every other unit symbol to quickly convert it. And then I just need to save each of these files. I have to save every file, and I'll place them all in the maintenance folder, and I'll name them as a maintenance unit. Bit depth is just auto detect, and what's also important is that we need to save these files as PNG files, since PNG is a standard image file and it supports transparency. And I'm not going to save all of these units, I'll just do the first two. Again, PNG file, change the name, keep the unit size the same, and leave it on auto detect. And then if I go into maptools, the maptools library points to pre-made tokens. So for the first time I use a maintenance token, I'm going to have to drag and drop it. I'll switch to the blank map. So I'll just drag and drop those tokens. And normally I would place all 8 tokens in a row. But I only have 2 so far. And then what we have here is, depending on what type of unit this is, I can click on one of these macros down along the bottom and set its standard size of unit. So let's call this a ground truck. The default size is, that's an army group. Number of trucks, I'll have to look up. And personnel, I'll have to look up. And for that, again in the NSDM folder, there's a notes folder. And there's a spreadsheet that has all of the standard force sizes that I've decided to use. These were originally based on the information Mark gave me, but that wasn't complete, so I had to expand it as best I could. And my spreadsheet is telling me that for units that use trucks, the number of trucks is 43,740 for an Army group, and personnel is 540,000. Or if I didn't want to look that up, I've got a pre-made infantry token right here that has exactly the same numbers. So I could just hover over that and then remember those numbers and copy them. And once I've created the token, I can then right-click and save. And I can go into the library, which actually holds pre-made tokens. Go into land, and the new folder, maintenance. And now I save my first token. And I would have to do each of those steps for every other token, setting this as merely an army with army-sized units and then saving it. And that is how to create tokens. The next step is how to create flags. So for this, I'm going to close all but one of these tokens I just created. And flags are stored in the maptools folder under maptools overlays, which is another folder I just added for convenience. So let's drag, say, the Cuba flag into paint.net. And this time I'm going to add it as a layer. So now that's the Cuba flag, which is being displayed on top of a generic unit symbol. If I turn it off, it's just the unit. If I turn it back on, it's the Cuban flag. And if I go to Color Picker and select the Cuban flag background, that's set to 90% or 90 out of 255 transparency. And I had a request to change the colors. So let's say that the Cuban flag color will be orange. So we'll set the transparency back to 90. And just paint it in. Yeah, it looks more pink than orange. Yeah. Finding a good color is always hard. Let's try that again at 90. And that's really not working very well. So let's go ahead and try what's left. Bright pink. It sort of works. Then we can try the rectangle around it as a solid color, so we'll try just blue. That's not really working for me. Set it back to 90. Let's try making it less transparent. And that's about as good as it's going to get. So what I do is I uncheck the old background and just delete that. And now what I can do is I can resave this flag. Go back to the maptools overlay. And I'm going to save it as, say, Cuba 2. Again, as a PNG file. And again, auto-detect for bit depth and everything. And click OK. And now if I go back into Map Tools, I can go to File, I can go to Edit, Campaign Properties, and I can go to States. If I scroll down, here's the entry for Cuba. It's an image. And I'm going to change the specific image for the Cuba state flag by going to Browse and Overlays. And this time I'm selecting Cuba 2. And then I'll click Update. And that just changed the Cuba flag. And if I go to the Cuba map, all of the units with Cuba flags just changed colors slightly. And if I go back to blank, and go to, say, state flags, I can set nationality to Cuba, but that doesn't set the owner to Cuba or anything because I'm supposed to use macros most of the time. So I'll go to Create F2 and National Flag Cuba, and now its ownership is officially set to Cuba, which we can see here, ownership Cuba. That's how to change the colors of flags or to create new flags. If you have an image of the flag, you can put in the corner. You can also create entirely new state symbols if there's something special you want to mark. So again, going back into here, I'll close that image, and I'll add a layer to this token. And let's say I want to put a yellow X at the bottom right of a token. I want to have that option available. Sometimes it'll be shown, sometimes it won't. Let's get the colors window back. So we select yellow. We're on a separate layer, and we'll just paint a yellow X in the bottom right. So the token just exists to show us where on the image to paint. We'll turn that off, close it, and now we just have a yellow X. All of these images need to be 256 pixels wide by 256 tall so that maptools can handle them properly. And now when we just go to save it, again, this is a state flag, so we'll put it in overlays. And we'll call it yellow X. Then if I go back into Map Tools, I can go back to Campaign Preferences, go back to Campaign Properties, go back to States, and I'm going to add something called yellow X. It uses an image. The image I'll browse, pull up the yellow X file, and then just click Add. And there it is at the bottom. And now, since I haven't written a macro for the yellow X state, I would have to go into State and set yellow X. And now there's a tiny yellow X in the bottom right at the corner because that's where I put it. And if I wanted to do that to several units, I just highlight them all, State yellow X. And that's how to create new flags and new states for the units. Note that I saved this in land maintenance. Sometimes that doesn't show up immediately, so I would have to close Map Tools and reopen it. In this case, it did. And that's everything for this tutorial, and thank you for watching.